In the middle of the 10th century, Europe was a land torn by power struggles, where the old and the new were constantly in collision. On one side were the ancient monarchies and feudal lords, some of whom had been in power for centuries. On the other, the rising force of the Holy Roman Empire, freshly crowned and striving to unite the fractured kingdoms of Europe under one imperial banner. In the midst of these battles for control, one woman's story would become a thread weaving through the fates of kingdoms, rulers, and empires. Her name was Adelaide of Burgundy, a woman who not only survived the turmoil of her time but ultimately shaped its course. Adelaide's life is a tale of resilience and intrigue, one that begins in the opulence of a noble family in Burgundy and stretches into the very heart of power, where emperors rise and fall. As her story unfolds, it becomes clear that she was more than just a queen or a consort to a mighty emperor. She was a formidable political player, a woman who knew how to navigate the intricate web of alliances, betrayals, and ambitions that marked the medieval world. Her legacy would not be one written merely by her marriage to Otto I, but by the indelible mark she left on the medieval European landscape, forging paths for her children and influencing the future of Europe itself. The year was 931, and the winds of the Alps carried with them the whispers of a child born to great expectations. In the heart of the kingdom of Burgundy, nestled in the shadow of snow-capped peaks, Adelaide was welcomed into the world. Her father, Duke Rudolph II, was a man of considerable power, overseeing a realm that stretched across much of what is now eastern France and Switzerland. Burgundy was a land of rugged beauty, its fertile valleys and commanding castles symbols of the family's long reign. From a young age, Adelaide was surrounded by the wealth and power of her family's court. Yet, even in her earliest years, she could sense the tension that simmered beneath the surface of her privileged life. Her father, Duke Rudolph, was a shrewd ruler, but his kingdom was far from secure. Burgundy, while strong, was frequently caught in the crossfire of competing powers, from the expanding Holy Roman Empire to the fierce ambitions of neighboring lords and kings. Adelaide's mother, the noble Queen Bertha, was a woman of great beauty and intelligence, known for her charitable works and strong ties to the church. She was Adelaide's first teacher, imparting lessons in the art of diplomacy, the importance of faith, and the necessity of maintaining one's composure in times of crisis. But it was her father who would shape the course of her early years. As Duke Rudolph's only daughter, Adelaide was often treated as a political pawn, her marriage prospects tied to the survival of Burgundy itself. Adelaide grew up amidst this turbulence, learning early the roles that women of her station were expected to play. She was taught how to manage a household, wield influence through marriage, and cultivate alliances that would secure her family's legacy. But the daughter of Burgundy was no ordinary princess. She was sharp-witted, observant, and not content to remain a passive participant in the affairs of her realm. As she matured, Adelaide began to understand the true nature of power and the delicate balance between love, loyalty, and ambition. Her first major test came when she was only 16. In the year 947, her father, aware of the fragility of his position, had long been seeking a powerful alliance to strengthen his influence. The answer came in the form of a marriage proposal from Lothair II, the King of Italy. Lothair, who ruled over the northern part of the Italian peninsula, was a man of similar age and ambition, and his proposal to marry Adelaide was a strategic move. Burgundy and Italy shared common borders, and the union would solidify an alliance that could help ward off the growing threat of German expansion under the rising Holy Roman Empire. Adelaide was young and inexperienced, but her father's pressure was impossible to ignore. The marriage was arranged, and in 947, she was sent to Italy to join her new husband, though the ceremony was grand, with banners flying and the streets of Pavia lined with spectators. Adelaide felt a sense of trepidation in her heart. She was leaving behind the only home she had ever known, stepping into a world that was both unfamiliar and threatening. Italy, a land of great cities and ancient rivalries, was a far cry from the relatively peaceful Burgundy she had left behind. Lothair, for his part, was a king burdened with his own struggles. Italy was a fractured land, divided between powerful noble families and external pressures from the north. The Italian nobles were wary of Lothair's rule, and the kingdom itself was a volatile patchwork of competing interests. Adelaide quickly realized that her marriage to Lothair would not be the fairy tale romance she had imagined. Instead, it became clear that her role was to navigate the complex political landscape of Italy, to stand by her husband as he tried to bring some semblance of order to the chaos around him. But Adelaide was no passive queen. As the years passed, she began to assert her influence, advising her husband on matters of diplomacy and governance. It was clear that the young woman from Burgundy had inherited her father's political acumen and her mother's wisdom. Yet, even as she worked tirelessly to stabilize Italy, Adelaide could feel the encroaching shadow of a new power rising to the north, the Holy Roman Empire under the rule of Otto I. In 950, tragedy struck. Lothair II, Adelaide's husband, passed away unexpectedly, leaving her a young widow in a kingdom teetering on the edge of disarray. This moment of loss would become the pivot point of Adelaide's life, thrusting her into a series of decisions that would change not only her destiny but the course of European history. Adelaide of Burgundy was born into a world of vast landscapes and shifting allegiances. Burgundy, a region nestled between France and the Holy Roman Empire, was a place of great wealth and strategic importance. It was here, in the palace of her father, Duke Rudolph II of Burgundy, that Adelaide spent her early years, a childhood that, while filled with luxury, was also shadowed by the tensions of an unstable European landscape. The Burgundy she grew up in was a land where power was fluid, alliances were fickle, and loyalty could shift with the wind. As a young girl, Adelaide was keenly aware of the machinations that swirled around her. Her father, a proud and powerful duke, held sway over the region, but his position was always under threat. Burgundy, though rich and influential, was constantly caught between the competing powers of France and the Holy Roman Empire. The political scene was complicated further by the rise of new, ambitious rulers, and the constant battles for control over land, resources, and influence. From an early age, Adelaide was trained to understand this world. She was taught diplomacy, the art of managing both political alliances and personal relationships. She learned the ways of the court, the intricacies of noble etiquette, and the skills necessary to navigate the sometimes treacherous waters of medieval politics. Her father ensured she was not merely a pawn in the larger game of power, but a player in her own right. Adelaide's intelligence and grace made her a favorite at court, where her charm and poise were often remarked upon. But despite the elegance of her upbringing, Adelaide was not shielded from the brutal realities of political intrigue. Her father's rule was marked by struggles with rival factions, both within Burgundy and outside it. The most pressing threat came from the Kingdom of France, which coveted Burgundy's resources and strategic location. Duke Rudolph's reign was plagued by constant border skirmishes and the occasional outright war. As a result, his hold on power was never secure. It was in this tense environment that Adelaide's first marriage was arranged. At the age of about 15, she was betrothed to King Lothair II of Italy, the son of King Hugh of Italy. This marriage was seen as a strategic alliance, one that would help secure Burgundy's position in the volatile politics of Italy. For Adelaide, the marriage was a means of solidifying her family's power, while for Lothair, it was a means of gaining the support of Burgundy as he sought to solidify his control over the Italian peninsula. Adelaide's wedding to Lothair was a grand affair, a union of two noble houses aimed at ensuring stability in a region torn apart by conflict. However, as the marriage unfolded, it quickly became apparent that the alliance was far more fragile than it appeared. Lothair, young and inexperienced, was hardly the powerful ruler that Adelaide's family had hoped for. He was caught in a constant struggle with the rising influence of Berenger II, an ambitious nobleman who had managed to seize significant control in northern Italy. The political reality of her marriage was grim. While Adelaide was married to a king, she found herself living in a court divided by infighting, weakened by the ongoing struggles for power. But she was not one to simply be swept along by the tides of fate. Adelaide quickly became aware of the precariousness of her position and began to use her intelligence and charm to subtly influence the decisions around her. She was not content to sit idly by while others fought for power. Instead, she became an astute observer, learning the intricacies of political maneuvering, forging her own alliances within the court, and strengthening her position. But despite her efforts, Lothaire's reign was doomed to fail. The political instability in Italy, combined with the growing power of Berenger, led to Lothaire's downfall. In 950, he died under mysterious circumstances, likely poisoned, though the true cause of his death remains a subject of historical speculation. The untimely death of her husband left Adelaide in a precarious position. Widowed at a young age, she found herself vulnerable to the machinations of Berenger II, who saw an opportunity to seize control of Italy. Berenger imprisoned Adelaide, hoping to force her into marriage so that he could claim the throne of Italy through her. But Adelaide, far from being a helpless pawn, proved to be a far more formidable figure than Berenger had anticipated. She was determined to maintain her dignity and her family's honor, and she would not marry Berenger. She resisted him with all the strength she could muster, refusing to be bullied or manipulated. It was during this time of captivity that Otto I, the future Holy Roman Emperor, entered the picture. Otto, who had already established himself as a powerful and successful ruler in the Holy Roman Empire, had his own designs on Italy. Hearing of Adelaide's plight, Otto saw an opportunity to solidify his power and expand his influence. He launched a military campaign to free Adelaide from Berenger's grasp, a bold move that would change the course of both their lives. The moment Adelaide was freed from Berenger's imprisonment, she found herself facing a new, complex set of choices. She could marry Otto and secure her position in the new political landscape, or she could attempt to regain her freedom and return to Burgundy. But in the moment of her release, she felt something shift inside her. She saw in Otto not just a powerful ruler, but a man who could help her secure the future she desired for herself, her family, and her kingdom. It was a choice that would alter the course of European history. Adelaide's youth was a training ground for the complexities of power, but nothing could have prepared her for the brutal realities of marriage, power struggles, and the fragility of life in the medieval courts. In 947, at the tender age of 16, she was married to Lothair II, the King of Italy. The marriage, arranged by her father Duke Rudolph II, was a political alliance meant to strengthen Burgundy's position in the Mediterranean region. The union, while arranged, was filled with both hope and fear, as it meant that Adelaide would soon step into the spotlight of European politics. Lothair was a young and ambitious king, ruling over a kingdom that was a patchwork of cultures and loyalties. Italy in the late 10th century was not the unified country we know today. Instead, it was a divided realm, with the northern Italian city-states and regions often caught in the tug-of-war between the Holy Roman Empire and local aristocracies. For a young queen like Adelaide, it was a life marked by ceremonial duties, the need for political wisdom, and an ever-present tension between competing powers. In the early years of their marriage, Adelaide and Lothair seemed to be a perfect match. He was devoted to her, and she, though still young, found herself increasingly drawn into the complex web of alliances that defined Italian politics. As queen, she was often seen as a mediator, a figure who could navigate the tensions between the clergy, the nobility, and the peasantry. However, beneath the surface, their marriage was fraught with challenges. Lothair's reign was marked by increasing pressure from local Italian rulers who questioned his authority. and a constant challenge to maintain the peace between the various factions vying for control. In 950, just 3 years into her marriage, Adelaide's life would be shattered. Lothair died unexpectedly, leaving her not only a widow but also vulnerable in a kingdom marked by instability. Some say that Lothair's death was a natural one. Others whisper that it was the result of a poisoned chalice, a silent political assassination orchestrated by those who sought to weaken his rule. Regardless of the cause, Adelaide found herself alone, and her world seemed to crumble around her. But the real test of Adelaide's strength came not with Lothair's death, but with what followed. Italy, already a fractured kingdom, was thrown into chaos. The nobles and rulers who had once bowed to Lothair now saw an opportunity to seize power. And among them was Berengar II, a ruthless and calculating ruler from the northern regions of Italy, who saw Adelaide not as a queen but as a prize to be claimed. Berengar II captured the young widow, and it is said that for months, Adelaide was imprisoned in a remote fortress. In those dark days, she endured isolation and the constant pressure of being forced to marry Berengar. But Adelaide was not one to bow easily. Even in her captivity, she remained resolute, her sharp mind never ceasing to calculate her next move. The prison was not just a cell. It was a crucible in which Adelaide's political acumen was forged. As she languished in captivity, Adelaide's thoughts turned toward one man, Otto I, the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. Otto had already made a name for himself as one of the most powerful rulers in Europe, having successfully defeated the Magyars and strengthened the empire's position in Central Europe. But for Adelaide, Otto was not just an emperor. He was a beacon of hope, a man who could restore her to her rightful place as queen. Otto had already been involved in the affairs of Italy and had a vested interest in seeing the region stabilized under a ruler he could control. And with his eye now set on the young widow, Adelaide knew that her salvation lay with him. It was in the year 951 that Otto, hearing of her plight, moved swiftly. He marched his army into Italy, determined not just to free Adelaide but to also secure his influence in the region. His army swept through the northern Italian states, and Berengar II, seeing the strength of the emperor's forces, was forced to release the captive queen. For Adelaide, this was the turning point in her life. The girl who had once been a mere political pawn now became a key player in one of the greatest power struggles in European history. When Otto arrived in the Italian city of Pavia, the court was abuzz with rumors of the emperor's arrival. The walls of the city, once strong and confident, now seemed brittle under the weight of impending change. But within this whirlwind of uncertainty, Adelaide's destiny was about to take a new shape. Otto, impressed by her strength and intelligence, soon found himself drawn to her. He proposed marriage, an offer that not only promised her freedom but also a powerful alliance with the Holy Roman Empire. Adelaide was no fool. She knew that this marriage would not just restore her to the throne of Italy, but also cement her position as an empress of the Holy Roman Empire. But marriage to Otto was not just a political decision. It was also an opportunity for Adelaide to take control of her fate, to shift the balance of power in Italy and beyond. It would be a union not just of two rulers, but of two formidable minds. The marriage between Adelaide and Otto took place in 951, and with it, a new chapter in her life began. For the first time in years, Adelaide was not just a widow or a prisoner. She was an empress. As Otto's wife, Adelaide would wield significant influence, not just over Italy, but over the entire Holy Roman Empire. The years of uncertainty and captivity had forged her into a ruler in her own right, and she would no longer simply follow orders. Now, she would command the course of history, but even as she stood by Otto's side, she was not blind to the challenges that lay ahead. The political landscape of Italy was as fractured as ever, and Otto's enemies were many. Berengar II, humiliated by his defeat, would not give up his ambitions easily. And yet, Adelaide had learned the art of survival. Her ability to navigate court politics, her intelligence, and her unyielding determination made her a force to be reckoned with. The world would soon learn that Adelaide of Burgundy was not just a queen or an empress, but a ruler in her own right. Adelaide's life, once filled with the potential of a powerful marriage, soon descended into a nightmare of betrayal and loss. The world around her, once a glittering promise of grandeur and influence, began to crumble as the political landscape in Italy became more volatile and treacherous. In 950, just a few short years after her marriage to Lothair II, the king died unexpectedly, leaving Adelaide not only a widow but also in the midst of a precarious political situation. Lothair's death was sudden and mysterious, and rumors quickly spread that he had been poisoned, though the true cause of his death was never confirmed. His passing left Italy vulnerable and fractured, and this gap in leadership provided an opportunity for ambitious and unscrupulous men to assert their dominance. One of those men was Berenger II, a powerful Italian nobleman with designs on the throne. His ambition and ruthlessness were well known, and he wasted no time in seizing control of the kingdom after Lothair's death. Berenger, recognizing Adelaide's political value, demanded that she marry him in order to solidify his claim to the throne. But Adelaide, still in mourning for her first husband and unwilling to marry a man she despised, rejected him outright. This rejection, however, would not go unpunished. Berenger, furious at the insult, took swift and brutal action. He had Adelaide captured, imprisoning her in a castle on the shores of Lake Como. The once proud queen, accustomed to the luxury of royal courts and the respect of powerful men, now found herself confined to a small, isolated room, her freedom stripped away. For months, Adelaide languished in captivity, a prisoner of Berenger's greed and political machinations. Yet, in the face of such adversity, her character began to harden. She was no longer the young princess of Burgundy or the widow of Lothair. She was a queen, determined to regain her freedom and her rightful place in the world. Despite the dire circumstances, Adelaide's mind remained sharp, her resolve unbroken. She understood that her imprisonment was not just a personal affront. It was part of the larger struggle for control of Italy. Berenger, by keeping her captive, not only aimed to eliminate any future claim she might have had to the throne, but also sought to use her as a pawn in the larger game of European politics. Adelaide knew that her only chance for survival, and perhaps even to reclaim her position, lay in aligning herself with a more powerful force. She had heard rumors of a rising star to the north, a ruler whose ambition was as great as Berenger's and whose reach extended beyond Italy itself. His name was Otto I, King of the Germans, soon to be crowned Holy Roman Emperor. If she could somehow gain his attention, perhaps he would come to her rescue. But how could she, a prisoner in a remote castle, ever hope to communicate with such a powerful man? Adelaide, however, had never been one to shy away from a challenge. She began to devise a plan. In the darkness of her confinement, she befriended one of the castle guards, a man who had grown disillusioned with Berenger's rule. Through whispered conversations and subtle gestures, she learned that the only way to send a message to Otto was through a network of merchants and diplomats who traveled between Italy and the northern realms. The opportunity came when a trader from Saxony, traveling on business, entered the town near the castle. Adelaide seized the moment. She managed to slip him a letter, hidden within a basket of fruit. The letter, though brief, was clear and to the point. It was a desperate plea for help from a queen who had been wronged. A queen who needed to escape Berenger's grasp. The trader, though initially hesitant, took the letter. It was not a journey without danger, but the thought of gold and favor from the mighty Otto I was enough to spur him onward. The letter made its way north, through treacherous mountain passes and across dangerous roads, until it finally reached the court of Otto I. Berenger II's reaction to Adelaide's rejection was swift and unforgiving. Angered by her refusal, he sought to strip her of her power and place her under his control. Adelaide, once a queen with a bright future ahead of her, was imprisoned in the fortress of San Colombano, a bleak, stone structure surrounded by the rolling hills of northern Italy. Her fate, once entwined with the throne of Italy, was now uncertain. For months, Adelaide was confined to the grim prison, isolated from the outside world. She had been stripped of her title and treated with disdain. But the iron will that had shaped her early years as a noblewoman began to manifest in her heart. In the cold, silent darkness of her imprisonment, Adelaide began to plan. She was not one to passively accept her fate. Her confinement was not a complete isolation from the world outside, though she still had loyal supporters who quietly worked on her behalf. Men and women who believed in her cause, and perhaps saw in her the last hope for Italy's future stability. Word of her plight eventually reached the ears of Otto I, the Holy Roman Emperor, a powerful ruler whose ambition had begun to stir across Europe. Otto, seeing the potential in Adelaide not only as a pawn in the larger political struggle, but as a woman of remarkable intelligence and fortitude, took action. Otto was a ruler known for his careful diplomacy, his military might, and his sharp political acumen. His involvement in the Italian affairs had grown steadily over the years, and the possibility of an alliance with the widowed Queen of Italy was too tempting to ignore. He saw an opportunity to further consolidate his power and expand his empire by securing Adelaide's release and marrying her. In 951, Otto's forces, under the guise of diplomacy and military assistance, marched into Italy. His armies were met with resistance, but the sheer might of the Holy Roman Empire was not to be underestimated. Berenger, unable to stand against Otto's growing influence, was forced to capitulate. Otto's troops, having overwhelmed Berenger's defenses, freed Adelaide from her imprisonment. The moment of her release was a turning point in Adelaide's life. No longer a prisoner in a foreign land, she was given the chance to regain her agency, but the future was still uncertain. Otto, ever the strategist, proposed marriage to Adelaide. This was no simple romantic gesture. It was a calculated move to solidify his claim over Italy and secure the future of his empire. Adelaide, though still mourning the loss of her first husband and the trauma of her captivity, saw the political realities before her. She had been stripped of her crown once, and in the chaotic, ever-changing landscape of medieval politics, she understood that a marriage to Otto would restore her position, not just as a queen, but as a force to be reckoned with. Reluctantly, she accepted Otto's proposal, and in 951, the two were wed in a grand ceremony that sent ripples through the courts of Europe. But while the marriage was political in nature, it did not lack mutual respect. Otto, despite his pragmatic motives, quickly came to recognize Adelaide's intelligence, strength, and political savvy. She was more than just a queen consort. She was a partner in every sense of the word. In the years that followed, Adelaide proved to be an invaluable advisor to Otto, and their union became a cornerstone of his rule. Together, they would navigate the treacherous waters of medieval politics, confronting both internal rebellions and external threats. For Adelaide, this second marriage was a fresh start, albeit one born out of necessity. Yet, it also marked the beginning of her transformation from a captive queen into a powerful empress in her own right. Her resilience, forged in the fires of adversity, would shape the destiny of the Holy Roman Empire. With Otto at her side, she was no longer a pawn in the hands of others. She was a force to be reckoned with. Despite her newfound power, the political challenges were far from over. The empire was still rife with rivalries, both among the German nobles and the Italian factions. The long-standing rivalry between the Holy Roman Empire and the Kingdom of France continued to simmer, and Otto's expansionist ambitions often brought him into conflict with other European monarchs. Adelaide, as Otto's wife and empress, would be forced to navigate this volatile landscape, balancing diplomacy with warfare and forging alliances with both friends and enemies alike. As Adelaide settled into her new role, she proved herself to be more than just a passive figurehead. She took an active role in managing the empire's affairs, often serving as Otto's advisor in matters of state. Her political astuteness was admired by many, and she became known for her calm demeanor and sharp intellect in times of crisis. She was not simply a queen at Otto's side. She was a co-ruler, sharing in the responsibilities and challenges of governing one of the most powerful empires in Europe. Yet, while her life as Empress offered her new opportunities, it did not come without its own set of trials. The tensions between Otto and his rivals, both within the empire and beyond, were constant. Political maneuverings, court intrigues, and the ever-present threat of rebellion were realities that Adelaide had to face daily. But through it all, she maintained her composure, drawing upon the inner strength that had sustained her through the darkest days of her captivity. As the years passed, Adelaide's influence within the empire grew. She became a trusted counselor to Otto, a leader in her own right, and a symbol of resilience for those who had once doubted her. She was not just a queen consort. She was the Empress, the woman who had survived captivity and betrayal, and who had risen to the heights of power through sheer will and intelligence. But even as she thrived in her new role, Adelaide's thoughts often turned to Italy. The kingdom that had once been hers was still torn by divisions, and Berenger, despite his defeat, remained a threat to the stability of the region. Yet Adelaide, ever the pragmatist, understood that her power now lay not in Italy alone but in her ability to influence the politics of Europe at large. Her position was not just one of survival, it was one of sovereignty. As she looked out over the lands that Otto ruled, Adelaide knew that her story had only just begun. The years ahead would be fraught with challenges, but they would also be marked by triumphs. Together with Otto, she would help shape the future of Europe, one that would be defined by their legacy, their alliances, and their shared vision of a united Christian empire. But the past was never far behind. The memories of captivity, of betrayal, and of lost kingdoms would remain etched in her heart. Yet she had proven, time and time again, that she was not one to be broken. She was Adelaide of Burgundy, and she had survived. Now, she would thrive. Adelaide's captivity under Berenger II was a defining moment, not just for her personally, but for the entire political landscape of Italy. With each passing day, her determination to regain her freedom and her rightful place in the world grew. Her mind, as sharp as ever, began to form a plan, a way out of this prison that had become her life. News of her plight had spread across the region, reaching the courts of Europe. It was in the bustling halls of the Holy Roman Empire, under the watchful eye of Emperor Otto I, that the seeds of her future would be sown. Otto I, a ruler whose ambition had driven him to expand his influence throughout Europe, recognized the strategic importance of Italy. He had already laid the groundwork for an alliance with the Italian states and had grown increasingly interested in securing his power in the region. When news of Adelaide's imprisonment reached him, he saw an opportunity not only to secure a powerful ally but also to further his own ambitions in Italy. At the time, Otto was in the midst of consolidating his rule in the Holy Roman Empire. His empire spanned vast territories, from present-day Germany to parts of Italy. But he still faced challenges from rival factions and nobles who sought to undermine his authority. Italy, with its divided states and constant infighting, was a particularly precarious region. It was a land where power could shift overnight, and Otto understood that securing a strong ally in Italy would help stabilize his reign. Adelaide, still a young woman at this time, was no stranger to political strategy. In her isolation, she had spent her days reading, reflecting, and carefully considering her next move. Though Berenger had stripped her of her title, she remained a queen in spirit, and her mind never stopped working. She knew that her freedom lay in the hands of someone with the power to challenge Berenger's authority, a man like Otto I. Otto, ever the tactician, recognized Adelaide's potential as an ally. In her, he saw not just the widow of a king, but a woman with strength, intelligence, and the political savvy necessary to help him expand his influence in Italy. He also saw in her a symbol of rightful rule, someone who could unite the fractured Italian states under his banner. With his ambition aligned with her desire for freedom, Otto moved quickly. In 951, Otto I sent a delegation to Italy with the aim of negotiating Adelaide's release. The terms were simple. Berenger II would be forced to surrender Adelaide to Otto's forces, and in return, Otto would provide military aid to Berenger to secure his own claim to power in northern Italy. Berenger, having no real choice in the matter, reluctantly agreed to the terms. When Adelaide was finally freed from her prison, it was not with the meekness of a victim, but with the resolve of a woman who had already begun to envision her next steps. She was no longer just a queen in exile. She was now a powerful symbol of resistance to Berenger's tyranny and a figure around whom the discontented could rally. Upon her release, Adelaide immediately met with Otto I. The two, despite the complexity of their political and personal dynamics, formed an alliance that would shake the foundations of Europe. Otto saw the potential of their union, not just in terms of military power, but as a political marriage that could solidify his rule in Italy and strengthen his position within the Holy Roman Empire. Adelaide, now free but still grieving her past, understood the weight of this new alliance. Marrying Otto I was not just an escape from captivity. It was a way to reclaim the power that had been stolen from her. And though she had little personal affection for Otto at the outset, she recognized the practicality of the arrangement. This marriage could give her the stability she had long craved and the political leverage she needed to restore her position in Italy. Their wedding in 951 was a grand affair, symbolizing not only the union of two powerful rulers but also the merging of two powerful kingdoms. Otto I's forces, bolstered by their alliance with Adelaide, began to move swiftly through Italy, challenging Berenger II's rule. Adelaide, now Empress of the Holy Roman Empire, found herself in a position of remarkable influence. Otto's campaign against Berenger II, backed by her presence and authority, gained momentum soon after their marriage. Otto moved to assert control over northern Italy, and the military campaigns began in earnest. But the battle for control of the Italian peninsula was not a simple one. Berenger, far from willing to give up his power without a fight, rallied his forces, leading to a series of clashes that would define the next several years. Throughout this time, Adelaide proved herself to be a shrewd and capable partner to Otto. While Otto led the armies, Adelaide focused on diplomatic efforts, negotiating alliances and securing the loyalty of key Italian nobles. Her ability to navigate the complex political landscape of Italy made her an invaluable asset to Otto's campaign. As the years passed, Berenger's forces were steadily pushed back, and the power balance in Italy began to shift. By 962, Otto I was crowned Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire by Pope John XII in Rome, an event that marked the peak of his ambitions. But it was Adelaide, standing beside him, whose strength and resilience had made the empire's expansion possible. Though Otto had ascended to the highest office in Christendom, it was clear to all who witnessed his reign that Adelaide was no mere consort. She was an empress in her own right, a woman whose political prowess and diplomatic skill helped guide the empire through turbulent waters. Together, the couple formed one of the most formidable ruling pairs in medieval Europe. Their alliance, rooted in both love and political necessity, would shape the future of the Holy Roman Empire for generations to come. In her later years, as Otto's empire grew stronger and their family flourished, Adelaide became a revered figure, not only in Italy but across Europe. Her legacy, built on resilience, wisdom, and an unyielding will to survive, would be passed down through the ages as an example of what one woman could achieve in a world dominated by men. But even as she grew older, Adelaide never forgot the years she spent in captivity. The memories of that dark time, though distant, remained a part of her. They served as a constant reminder of the price of power and the fragile nature of royal fortune. Yet, she never allowed those memories to break her spirit. Instead, they fueled her ambition and shaped her into the woman who would come to define an era. Adelaide's liberation was nothing short of dramatic. When Otto I, moved by both the political opportunity and his sense of justice, decided to intervene in her captivity. He did so with calculated precision. He had already made a name for himself as a ruler who could wield both diplomacy and military power with remarkable skill. And this rescue would be no different. The Holy Roman Emperor had learned of the growing unrest in Italy and recognized that Berenger II's control over the kingdom was tenuous at best. He sent an envoy to Berenger, demanding the release of Adelaide and threatening military action if the prisoner was not freed. Berenger, knowing that he could not afford to antagonize the mighty Otto, reluctantly agreed, though he still harbored hopes of marrying Adelaide himself, to further consolidate his hold over Italy. Adelaide's release from captivity was a bittersweet moment. The relief of regaining her freedom was tempered by the realization that she had lost everything: her position as queen, her hope for a peaceful future in Italy, and most painfully, the memory of her first husband, Lothair II. But as she was escorted from the fortress where she had been held, a new sense of purpose began to grow within her. The events that had transpired were not the end of her story. They were, in fact, the beginning of something much larger. Otto I, sensing both an opportunity and a shared interest, arrived to meet Adelaide in the city of Pavia. Their meeting was marked by respect. Otto, a man of imposing stature and powerful presence, greeted Adelaide not just as a noblewoman, but as an equal. He had heard of her intelligence, her resilience, and her political savvy. He saw in her not just a victim of Berenger's cruelty, but a woman with whom he could form a powerful alliance. The two rulers struck a deal. Otto I offered Adelaide the protection of the Holy Roman Empire, a promise of future security for both herself and her kingdom. In return, he asked for her hand in marriage, a union that would solidify his position in Italy and further his ambitions of becoming the undisputed ruler of the Italian peninsula. Adelaide, although still mourning the loss of her first marriage, saw the wisdom in this union. She had come to realize that her own fate could no longer be dictated solely by her emotions or desires. She was a woman of power, and with Otto I, she could achieve far more than she ever could alone. Her decision was not made lightly, but she knew it was the best way to ensure her future and, perhaps, the future of Italy itself. Their marriage in 951 was a powerful political statement, a union between the Holy Roman Emperor and the last Queen of Italy. It marked the beginning of a new era for both Adelaide and Otto, one that would reshape the very landscape of Europe. As Empress of the Holy Roman Empire, Adelaide's role was not confined to the typical duties of a royal consort. She quickly proved to be a formidable political ally to Otto, helping to guide his policies and navigate the complex web of alliances that stretched across the empire. She was not content to simply be a figurehead. She was a partner in every sense of the word. Otto's reign, although relatively stable compared to many of his predecessors, was not without its challenges. The Italian states remained divided, and there were constant threats from both within and outside the empire. Yet, with Adelaide by his side, Otto found his reign strengthened. Her presence lent him the legitimacy he needed to assert his authority in Italy and, more broadly, across Europe. Their marriage also gave Adelaide a unique position in European politics. As Empress, she held sway over the courts of both Italy and Germany, and her influence was felt in the halls of power from Rome to Aachen. Yet, despite her growing power, she never lost sight of her roots. Her love for Burgundy and her desire to see her homeland prosper remained at the forefront of her mind. She used her position to ensure that her family's interests were protected and to secure a future for her children that would allow them to rise to the heights of European power. The birth of their first child, a son named Ludolf, was a significant event in their marriage. He was the heir to the Holy Roman Empire, and his birth was seen as a symbol of the strength and continuity of Otto's rule. For Adelaide, it was a moment of personal joy as well as political triumph. She had secured her place in history as the mother of the next emperor, and she would go on to play a crucial role in his upbringing and education. Despite the success of their marriage, however, the challenges never ceased. Otto's expansionist ambitions in Italy created tension with the local nobility, and Berenger too, though defeated, still had his supporters who sought to undermine Otto's authority. Yet, Adelaide's intelligence and diplomatic skill were invaluable in helping to smooth over tensions and maintain Otto's position. As the years passed, Adelaide grew more and more involved in the governance of the empire. She acted as a regent during Otto's military campaigns, and her decisions were often as impactful as those of her husband. She was not just a passive consort. She was a force in her own right, using her political acumen to guide Otto's policies and protect the interests of the empire. But despite all of her success, Adelaide never forgot the struggles of her past. She had been a prisoner, a widow, and a queen without a kingdom. Her life had been one of hardship and sacrifice, but through it all, she had persevered. Now, as Empress, she had not only regained her status and power but had helped to shape the future of Europe. Her role as a queen, wife, and mother was vital to the continued success of the Holy Roman Empire. Yet Adelaide knew that her legacy would not just be defined by the title she held, but by the strength and wisdom she brought to the table. She had survived captivity, outlasted her enemies, and emerged as one of the most powerful women of her time. And as Otto's reign continued to flourish, Adelaide's legacy would be cemented not just as a consort, but as a ruler in her own right. Adelaide's arrival at Otto I's court was nothing less than a spectacle, a grand turning point in the turbulent political landscape of Europe. Having been freed from her captor's clutches, she now stood before a man who was not only the most powerful ruler in the Holy Roman Empire, but a visionary with ambitions to shape Europe's future. It was in Otto's presence that Adelaide would find both a protector and a partner, one who recognized her potential not just as a consort, but as a co-ruler in her own right. Their marriage, which took place in 951, was both a personal and political alliance of immense significance. Otto, who had conquered vast territories and secured his position as Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire in 962, knew the value of such a union. Adelaide, though initially wary of being used as a political pawn once again, recognized the opportunity this marriage presented. She had suffered at the hands of Berenger too, had been imprisoned and betrayed, but now she was in a position to influence not just Italy but the entire fate of Europe. The wedding between Otto and Adelaide was not merely a celebration of love. It was a statement. Their union solidified Otto's influence over Italy, and Adelaide, as Empress, would help him consolidate his power there. But as much as Otto needed Adelaide for political stability, he also admired her strength and intellect. Theirs was a partnership based not just on duty, but also on mutual respect. As Empress, Adelaide proved herself to be an invaluable advisor to Otto. With her deep understanding of Italian politics and her ability to navigate the complex networks of noble families and church leaders, Otto's conquest of Italy was no simple military campaign. It was a series of intricate negotiations, battles, and alliances, all of which required careful strategy. Adelaide was not just a passive figure during these campaigns. She actively participated, influencing decisions and steering Otto's diplomacy. She was present at court when Otto met with Italian nobles, and her counsel was sought when tensions flared between the emperor and local rulers. Her experience as a queen in Italy, her knowledge of local customs, and her understanding of the delicate balance of power gave her a unique position to shape the course of events. But as the years passed, it became clear that Adelaide's influence was not limited to the Italian peninsula. She was not just an empress in name, but a formidable ruler in her own right. Her diplomatic skills were tested again when Otto sought to solidify his empire by strengthening ties with the Byzantine Empire and other Christian kingdoms. In these negotiations, Adelaide's role as a mediator and a symbol of Christian unity was invaluable. She met with Byzantine envoys, participated in religious councils, and helped forge alliances that would secure Otto's reign for years to come. However, as the decades wore on, Otto's focus began to shift. His ambitions extended beyond Italy. He sought to create a legacy that would endure through his descendants. He looked to Adelaide to provide him with an heir, a son who could carry on his vision of a united and powerful Holy Roman Empire. In 961, their son, Otto I, was born, securing the future of the dynasty and solidifying Adelaide's position not just as a political figure, but as the mother of the next emperor. Despite the joy of motherhood, Adelaide's life remained filled with challenges. As the years passed, Otto I's health began to decline. The demands of ruling an empire that stretched from Germany to Italy, combined with the pressures of maintaining alliances and navigating threats from all sides, took their toll on the aging emperor. Yet even as his strength waned, Adelaide continued to play a central role in the court. She stepped in during Otto's absences, managing imperial affairs and overseeing the daily functions of the empire. She was instrumental in ensuring that Otto I's ascension to the throne would be smooth, even as political tensions in Europe threatened the empire's stability. In 973, Otto I passed away, leaving his empire to his son, Otto I. Adelaide's role, however, was far from over. With her son now emperor, she assumed the role of regent, guiding Otto I's decisions and helping him navigate the complexities of ruling such a vast and fractured empire. It was a position she had prepared for her entire life, one that required wisdom, strength, and the ability to make tough decisions in a world where alliances shifted like sand. Adelaide's regency was marked by several significant events, including continued efforts to consolidate power in Italy and maintain the integrity of the Holy Roman Empire. She fought against rebellious nobles, managed relations with the papacy, and ensured that Otto I's authority remained unchallenged. Throughout these turbulent years, she never lost sight of the legacy she had forged alongside her late husband, Otto I. In her final years, as Otto I grew into his own as emperor, Adelaide withdrew from the active political stage. Though she remained a figure of influence in the court, she spent her last years in her beloved kingdom of Burgundy, where she had once been a princess, before passing away in 999 at the age of 68. Her death marked the end of an era, but her legacy lived on. She had been more than a mere consort or empress. She had been a queen, a ruler, and a symbol of resilience and strength. The empire that Otto I had built was now carried forward by Otto I, and Adelaide's role in shaping that empire could not be denied. In the annals of history, Adelaide of Burgundy is remembered not only as the wife of an emperor but as an empress in her own right, a woman who, through her intelligence, diplomacy, and unwavering resolve, became one of the most powerful and influential figures of her time. Her life was a testament to the power of a woman who refused to be relegated to the shadows of history, a woman who, through her courage and foresight, helped shape the course of European history.